They left her bleeding in the snow like discarded trash. Her spine was shattered, her body broken, and her life as a struggling barista was over before it truly began. But the monsters who brutalized Lena and abandoned her outside that shopping district didn't know who would find her minutes later. They didn't know that King Alaric Nocturne, the vampire sovereign who has ruled the night for 800 years, was walking through that very street. He wasn't hunting for blood. He wasn't searching for prey. He was about to discover the woman he'd mourned for 4 centuries, and when he learns who did this to her, the world will drown in blood. You need to hear this story. The snow in the shopping district didn't just fall. It descended like frozen judgment, burying the sins of the city beneath pristine white lies. For King Alaric Nocturne, the winter storm was nothing more than atmospheric decoration. He walked alone through the festive streets, silver-white hair catching the glow of holiday lights, his burgundy velvet coat untouched by the accumulating snow. Being the sovereign of the northern vampire courts, the apex predator of the immortal world, meant that very little surprised him anymore. He had watched the rise and fall of empires. He had seen humanity evolve from feudal serfs to digital gods. He had survived 8 centuries of existence, and the weight of all those years pressed down on him like an invisible crown of thorns. He was profoundly, devastatingly bored. "Your Majesty," a voice crackled through the discreet earpiece he wore. Mikhail, his driver and bodyguard, waiting in the car 2 blocks away. "The council meeting concluded an hour ago. Shall I bring the car around?" "Not yet," Alaric murmured, his voice low and commanding, a voice that could compel obedience or inspire terror with equal ease. "I need air." What he really needed was to feel something. Anything. The council meeting had been the same tedious theater it always was. Territorial disputes. Younger vampires getting reckless with their feeding. The endless political games that had once thrilled him now felt like watching the same play performed for the 1000th time. He paused outside a coffee shop, Moonbeam Cafe, according to the cheerful sign, and watched humans inside, laughing over steaming cups, their breath fogging the windows. They lived such brief, intense lives, burning bright and fast like matches struck in the dark. Once, centuries ago, he had envied that. Now he felt only a distant, archaeological curiosity. The scent hit him before his mind could process what it meant. Blood. But not just blood. Fear. Raw, primal, terrified fear that made his predatory instincts surge to life for the first time in decades. And beneath that sharp tang of copper and adrenaline, something else. Something that made his centuries-old heart stutter in his chest. Vanilla. Chamomile. Old parchment. A scent he knew. A scent he had mourned for 380 years. Alaric's head snapped toward the alley beside the cafe. His supernatural vision pierced the darkness and the falling snow, and what he saw made him move faster than human eyes could track. There, crumpled beside a dumpster like refuse, lay a woman. She was small, broken, dying. Her auburn hair was matted with blood that stained the fresh snow crimson. A white barista uniform, button-down shirt, black apron, was torn and soaked with blood and melting ice. Her legs were twisted at angles that made even his immortal stomach clench. Alaric dropped to his knees beside her, snow soaking through his expensive trousers. He didn't care. The entire world had narrowed to this moment, this woman, this impossible sight. "Human," he said softly, reaching out with a gloved hand to brush the blood-matted hair from her face. She didn't respond. Her breathing was shallow, labored, a wet, rattling sound that told him her lungs were filling with blood. She had been beaten systematically, brutally. This wasn't a random mugging. This was a message. An execution. He intended to check for a pulse, perhaps call an ambulance anonymously and disappear. He was not a hero. He was a monster, and monsters didn't save people. But then she opened her eyes. Ice blue with depths of green, like winter water over emerald stone. Eyes that looked up at him with fading consciousness and absolute recognition, as if she knew him from somewhere beyond memory. Alaric froze. For 800 years, he had not felt genuine shock. He had not felt fear. But now his unbeating heart seemed to slam against his ribs like a prisoner desperate for escape. He knew those eyes. He had painted those eyes in journals in 1645, sitting vigil beside a pyre. He had watched those eyes close in death as the flames consumed his wife Seraphina, burned alive by witch hunters who called her evil while committing the greatest evil themselves. Seraphina, he whispered, his voice cracking with an emotion he thought he'd forgotten how to feel. The woman's lips parted. Blood bubbled at the corner of her mouth. She couldn't focus on him, couldn't speak clearly, but she whispered one word through broken teeth and punctured lungs. Please. Alaric used his vampiric sight, scanning her body with supernatural precision. What he saw ignited a rage in him that he hadn't felt since the night he'd slaughtered every witch hunter in 3 counties. Her spine was severed at the L1 vertebra. Her pelvis was shattered. Internal bleeding. Fractured ribs piercing organs. She was dying, and even if she survived, she would never walk again. She was broken beyond any human capability to repair. A sound emerged from Alaric's throat, not the cold anger of a king, but the feral, protective roar of a mate who has found his beloved destroyed. He scooped her into his arms with infinite care. She weighed almost nothing, frail from poverty even before the beating. Her head lolled against his chest, staining his burgundy coat with mud and blood and melting snow. He didn't care. He would burn the coat and the city and the entire world if necessary. Mikhail, he said into his earpiece, his voice resonating with a power that made windows rattle in their frames 3 blocks away. Bring the car. Now. Clear every street between here and the Citadel. And call Dr. Soren Blackwood. Tell him to prepare the medical wing for trauma surgery and to ready the forbidden archives. He'll know what that means. Sire, is she food? Mikhail's confusion was evident in his voice. Alaric looked down at the dying woman in his arms. His eyes had bled from their usual red to a blazing crimson gold that only appeared in moments of extreme emotion. His fangs had descended, sharp and deadly, an instinctive response to protect what was his. She is not food, Alaric snarled, holding the broken woman tighter, his cold body her only warmth in the freezing night. She is the queen. The drive to the Obsidian Citadel normally took 30 minutes. Mikhail made it in 12. Lena, that was the name on the cracked ID card in her pocket, along with a photo of a tabby cat and an eviction notice, drifted in and out of consciousness. The pain was a white-hot universe unto itself, consuming everything else. She remembered fragments. The alley behind the cafe. The headlights. The men. The sound of her own spine snapping, a crack that disconnected her legs from her brain in an instant of blinding agony. Their laughter as they walked away. Tell your boyfriend he shouldn't have tested the syndicate's patience. Boyfriend? She didn't have a boyfriend. She'd gone on 3 dates with Nick Raven, that charming photographer, but she'd ended it when he started asking unsettling questions about her family medical history and whether she'd ever noticed anything unusual about her blood. Now there was only darkness, the scent of winter and expensive cologne, and a coldness that somehow felt safe. When the vehicle stopped, she felt herself being lifted. The movement sent lightning bolts of agony through her shattered body, and she screamed a raw, animal sound of suffering. Sure, I have you. I have you, Lena, a velvet voice whispered near her ear, and despite the pain, despite everything, she believed it. She forced her eyes open. A man was carrying her like she weighed nothing. He was devastatingly beautiful in an inhuman way, silver-white hair, pointed ears, skin like pale marble, and glowing red eyes that should have terrified her but instead made her feel seen for the first time in her invisible life. He looked like a dark angel. Or a beautiful devil. Am I dead? She wondered distantly. Is this what comes after? They burst through massive obsidian doors. The interior was Gothic grandeur, Black marble floors, vaulted ceilings that disappeared into shadow, crystalline chandeliers that cast prismatic light through the darkness. A team of people in medical scrubs was waiting. On the table, Your Majesty, a man with silver-streaked hair and wire-rimmed glasses commanded with the confidence of someone used to giving orders even to kings. This was Dr. Soren Blackwood, the Citadel's master physician. Alaric laid her down with a gentleness that contradicted his predatory appearance. His hands lingered on her shoulders as the medical team swarmed around her. Scissors cut away her blood-soaked uniform. IVs were inserted into her bruised arms with practiced efficiency. Status, Alaric barked, pacing like a caged apex predator. Dr. Soren worked quickly, his experienced hands assessing damage. Multiple fractures. Internal bleeding in the abdominal cavity. Collapsed left lung. 3 cracked ribs. But the primary concern is the L1 vertebra, Your Majesty. He paused, his expression grave. It's completely crushed. The spinal cord is severed. She is paralyzed from the chest down. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Paralyzed. Alaric stopped pacing. He stared at Lena's pale face, already so peaceful under sedation. She looked like Seraphina. She had Seraphina's spirit. But she was her own person, and she was broken in ways that should be permanent. Fix her, Alaric commanded, his voice brooking no argument. Sire, I can repair the internal damage. I can set the bones. But the spine. Soren hesitated. Human medicine has no cure for this. And if we give her vampire blood to turn her in this state, the transformation will kill her. Her body is too weak. It would tear her apart from the inside. I did not say turn her, Alaric hissed, his eyes blazing. I said fix her. Use the ritual of Phoenix Ash. The crimson binding. The forbidden regenerative arts. Soren paled. Those magics haven't been attempted in centuries, Your Majesty. The cost. Alaric moved with supernatural speed, his hand gripping Soren's throat and lifting him off the ground. Not enough to kill, but enough to emphasize the severity of his words. I don't care. She will walk again, or I will reduce this city to ash and bone. Do you understand me, Doctor? Yes, Your Majesty, Soren gasped. Alaric released him and turned back to the table. He reached for Lena's belongings, a cracked phone, an employee badge, overdue bills, a photo of a tabby cat named Jasper. Evidence of a life lived on the margins, barely surviving. He ran his thumb over her name badge. Lena. Who did this to you? He whispered to the unconscious woman who might be his salvation or his final damnation. He walked into the corridor where Mikhail waited. The sorrow vanished from Alaric's face, replaced by the cold, calculating mask of a king preparing for war. Mikhail. Yes, Your Majesty. Take her phone. Unlock it. I want to know everything about her life. Who is Nick Raven? Where did she work? Who were her enemies? Alaric adjusted his cuffs, though his hands trembled with barely contained rage. And summon the Shadow Guard. I want every street in this city swept. If a rat whispers in an alley tonight, I want to know about it. What are you planning to do, sire? Alaric looked back at the medical wing where the woman with his dead wife's eyes was fighting for her life. I'm going to hunt. As he walked toward his armory, one thought consumed him. This wasn't random. The specific nature of her injury, the paralyzing blow, was a signature tactic of the Crimson Syndicate. They preferred to leave their victims alive but broken, a warning to others. But why her? Why a barista barely surviving on tips? Unless they knew. Unless they had discovered what she was before even she knew it. If the Syndicate had touched her to get to him, or worse, if they had touched her because of what she was, Alaric vowed he would not merely kill them. He would make them beg for the mercy of oblivion. Back in the medical wing, Lena's heart monitor beeped steadily. Beneath the bandages on her shoulder, a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon began to pulse with faint golden light, reacting to the ancient magic saturating the room. She wasn't just a barista. She wasn't just a victim. She was the key to a war that was about to consume the supernatural world, and the one woman who could either save the vampire king or destroy him forever. Consciousness returned to Lena not as a gentle awakening, but as a violent collision with reality. One moment there was blessed darkness, the next agony. Sharp, relentless pain that radiated from her back like shattered glass embedded in her spine. She gasped, eyes flying open, and immediately regretted it. The ceiling above her was painted with intricate frescoes, angels and demons locked in eternal battle across black marble and silver leaf. Firelight danced across the artwork, casting moving shadows that made the figures seem alive. Where the hell was she? This wasn't a hospital. The walls were obsidian stone, polished to a mirror shine. Medieval tapestries hung between modern medical equipment. A fireplace large enough to stand and crackled with blue-tinged flames that gave off no smoke. The bed beneath her was impossibly soft, black silk sheets that felt cool against her feverish skin. "You're awake." The voice came from the corner of the room. Lena's head snapped toward the sound too fast. Nausea rolled through her gut, and she tasted copper. A man stepped into the firelight. Silver-streaked hair, wire-rimmed glasses, wearing a white coat over what looked like Victorian-era clothing. His expression was kind, but his eyes held the weight of terrible knowledge. "My name is Dr. Soren Blackwood," he said gently, moving to her bedside. "You're in the Obsidian Citadel. You've been unconscious for 2 days. 2 days. The cafe. The alley. The men." Nick's face twisted with cold calculation as he nodded to them. The baseball bat. The crack. The snow turning red beneath her. "I need to go," Lena whispered, her voice raw and broken. "I have a shift. If I miss another shift, I'll get fired. I can't. I need the money. My rent is." "Miss Lena." Dr. Soren removed his glasses, cleaning them with deliberate slowness. "Your rent is no longer a concern. Please, you need to listen to me very carefully." Something in his tone made ice crystallize in her chest. She looked down at her body for the first time. She was wearing a soft cotton gown, not a hospital gown but something finer. Bandages wrapped around her torso, and 4 in her arm connected to a bag of clear fluid. And her legs. Her legs lay beneath the black silk sheets, perfectly still. "Move your toes," she commanded herself. "Just wiggle your toes." Nothing. "Try harder." Still nothing. The panic started small, a flutter in her chest, then grew wings and began to scream. "Why can't I feel my legs?" Her voice rose. "Why can't I?" "You sustained catastrophic trauma," Dr. Soren said, and she hated how calm he sounded, how practiced, as if he delivered the speech before. "Internal bleeding, which we've repaired. Fractured ribs. Broken bones. But the blow to your back." He paused, and in that pause, Lena heard her entire future collapse. "Your L1 vertebra was crushed on impact. The spinal cord was completely severed." The room tilted. "What does that mean?" "It means you're paralyzed from the chest down. Permanently. Human medicine has no cure for a severed spinal cord." "I'm so very sorry." "Permanently." The word echoed in her skull like a death knell. "No." She shook her head, tears already burning in her eyes. "No, you're wrong. I just need surgery. Physical therapy. I can work. I'll pay you back. I'll." "Miss Lena." "I'm 26 years old." The scream tore from her throat. "I'm a barista. I carry trays. I'm on my feet 10 hours a day. I don't have savings. I don't have insurance. I don't have anyone." The tears came now, hot and fast. "If I can't work, I starve. If I can't walk, I'm dead anyway." She threw back the silk sheets with trembling hands. Her legs were there, pale, wrapped in light bandages, but there. They looked normal. They looked fine. She struck her right thigh with her fist as hard as she could. Nothing. She felt the impact in her hand, felt her knuckles connect with flesh, but her leg felt nothing. It was like hitting a mannequin. A corpse. "No, no, no." She hit her leg again. Harder. Wake up. Wake up. Miss Lena, please, you're going to hurt yourself. I'm already hurt. She was sobbing now, striking her dead legs over and over, trying to force sensation back into them through sheer will. Just let me die. What's the point? What's the point of half a life? Stop. The single word cut through her hysteria like a blade through silk. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees in an instant. The firelight flickered and dimmed. Lena's hands froze mid-strike. She looked toward the door. A man stood in the doorway, and calling him a man felt inadequate. He was tall, dressed in burgundy velvet and black silk like something from another century. Silver-white hair fell past his shoulders, framing a face too beautiful to be entirely human. Pointed ears. Pale skin that seemed to glow in the dim light. And eyes, red eyes that burn like embers in the darkness. She knew him. The man from the snow. The one who'd carried her. You are not half of anything, he said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in her chest where her heart hammered against her ribs. He moved toward the bed with fluid, predatory grace, making no sound on the stone floor. Dr. Soren stepped back immediately, giving him space, giving him deference. The man sat on the edge of the mattress. The bed barely dipped under his weight. He reached out and took her hand, and his touch was shockingly, impossibly cold, like holding winter itself. But somehow it anchored her, stopped the spiral. My name is Alaric Nocturne, he said, his red eyes never leaving hers. I am the king of the northern vampire courts, sovereign of the immortal territories, and I have ruled the night for 800 years. He paused, letting that sink in. And you, Lena, are not what you seem. He smiled then, just slightly, and his canines elongated into fangs, sharp, white, deadly. Lena's breath caught. She should have been terrified. She should have screamed. But instead, she felt a strange sense of recognition, as if some part of her had always known monsters were real. I am not human, Alaric continued, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a gesture that felt both possessive and protective. And I have waited 800 years for you. I don't understand, Lena whispered. Why would you wait for me? I'm nobody. I'm just... In 1645, Alaric interrupted, his voice taking on the quality of something ancient and grieving. My wife was burned alive by witch hunters. They called her evil. They called her a threat to God's natural order. His jaw tightened. Her name was Seraphina. She had auburn hair that caught fire in the sunlight. She had a spirit that refused to break even as the flames consumed her. And she had eyes exactly like yours, ice blue with depths of green, like winter water over emerald stone. Lena stared at him, her heart pounding. When I found you in the snow, Alaric said, leaning closer, dying and broken, and you opened your eyes, I knew. Souls don't die, Lena. They cycle. They return. They find their way back to those who love them. His hand tightened on hers. I have searched for you for nearly 4 centuries. And now that I've found you, I will not lose you again. You think I'm her? Lena's voice was barely a whisper. Reincarnated? I don't think, Alaric said, his red eyes blazing with an intensity that made her breath catch. I know. The fireplace flared suddenly, blue flames leaping higher. The men who did this to you, Alaric continued, his voice dropping to something dangerous, something that promised violence, they will beg for death before I'm through with them. They will pray for mercy, and I will show them exactly as much mercy as they showed you. His fangs gleamed in the firelight. None. Lena should have been afraid. This creature, this vampire king, was promising murder, promising vengeance, claiming she was someone she couldn't possibly be. But as she looked into his ancient eyes and saw centuries of grief and loneliness reflected there, she felt something she hadn't felt since the moment her spine snapped. Hope. For a long moment after Alaric's declaration, silence filled the chamber. Lena could hear her own heartbeat, the crackle of the blue flames, the whisper of fabric as Dr. Soren shifted uncomfortably near the door. The weight of centuries pressed down on the room, and she felt impossibly small beneath it. Then the door opened, and Dr. Soren cleared his throat with the careful deliberation of someone interrupting a king. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice apologetic but urgent. "The blood work is complete. There are anomalies you need to see." Alaric's eyes never left Lena's face. "Can it wait?" "No, sire. I don't believe it can." Something in the doctor's tone made Alaric's expression shift. He released Lena's hand. She immediately missed the cold anchor of his touch and stood with that unnatural fluid grace. Dr. Soren approached carrying a silver tray. On it sat 2 vials, one containing dark red liquid that Lena recognized with a jolt as her own blood, and another filled with something black and viscous that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "When we performed the initial surgery," Dr. Soren began, setting the tray on the bedside table, "I ran comprehensive blood panels. Standard procedure for trauma cases." He adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, a nervous habit. Miss Lena's blood showed irregularities. Genetic markers I've never seen in 8 centuries of practice. "Show me," Alaric commanded. Dr. Soren lifted the vial of black liquid. "This is vampire essence. Pure concentrate from a willing donor. When mixed with human blood, the human blood is typically consumed. It darkens, dies, breaks down at the cellular level." He held the vial over Lena's blood sample. "But Miss Lena's blood." He squeezed a single drop of the black essence into the red. What happened next defied everything Lena thought she understood about the world. The moment the black drop touched her blood, the vial exploded with light. Not metaphorically, it literally erupted in white-hot flame. The red liquid ignited like gasoline meeting a match, burning with an intensity that made Lena throw her arm across her face. The heat was instant and overwhelming, like standing too close to a furnace. The vampire essence didn't mix with her blood. It disintegrated, consumed, incinerated in seconds, leaving nothing but wisps of black smoke. The glass vial cracked with a sharp sound, unable to withstand the temperature. "What the hell is that?" Lena gasped, pressing herself back against the headboard. But Alaric wasn't recoiling. He was leaning forward, his red eyes wide with something between awe and hunger. The firelight caught in his silver hair as he stared at the smoking, cracked vial. "Phoenix blood," he whispered. Then louder, with certainty, "You're a chimera, Lena." "A what?" Alaric turned to her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "Your blood burns with the essence of sunlight itself. Purifying fire." He gestured to the destroyed vial. "That essence would have turned a normal human, would have begun the transformation into one of us. But your blood rejected it, destroyed it, burned it away like morning light burns shadow." Lena looked at her bandaged arms, at the force still feeding clear fluids into her veins. "So I'm, what?" "Poisonous." "You're extraordinary," Alaric said fiercely. He sat back down on the bed, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from him. "Phoenix blood is a genetic anomaly that occurs perhaps once in a millennium. Carriers are born with solar energy woven into their very cells." His hand hovered over hers, not quite touching. "To vampires, your blood is either the ultimate weapon or the ultimate prize." The pieces began clicking into place in Lena's mind, each one worse than the last. "Nick," she said suddenly. "My ex-boyfriend. He kept asking weird questions. About my family medical history. Whether I'd ever noticed anything unusual about myself. If I'd ever been seriously sick." Her voice rose. "He asked about my blood type 3 times. I thought he was just being weird, so I broke it off." Alaric's expression darkened, his features shifting into something predatory. "Nick Raven. The photographer with the studio downtown. You know him?" "His real name is Nikolai Volkov," Alaric said, and the temperature in the room dropped another 10 degrees. "He's a lieutenant in the Crimson Syndicate, a vampiric crime organization that's been searching for Phoenix blood carriers for decades. They want to create daywalkers. Vampires immune to sunlight. Lena felt like she might vomit. He was using me. Testing me. Yes. Alaric's jaw tightened. They were screening you. Running tests through your coffee, probably. Hair samples. Saliva. Building a genetic profile. His red eyes burned brighter. When your blood proved too volatile, too pure, they marked you for elimination. Phoenix blood this potent can't be harvested safely. Can't be controlled. So they decided you were too dangerous to live. So I'm toxic, Lena said flatly, staring at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. A freak of nature that needs to be put down. No. The word cracked like thunder. Alaric gripped her shoulders, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to force her to look at him. You are a miracle, he said, his voice raw with an emotion she couldn't name. Yes, your blood can kill us. It can incinerate vampire essence on contact. But that's not all it can do. He took her hand and pressed it against his chest, right over where his heart would beat if it still beat. I am 800 years old, Lena. I am primordial. Ancient. Strong enough to withstand your fire. I don't understand. If I can bond with your essence, Alaric continued, his eyes never leaving hers, if we can create a resonance between your blood and mine, it won't just destroy. Your solar energy can regenerate, can rebuild, can heal what human medicine cannot. The implication hit her like a physical blow. You think your blood can fix my spine? I think together we can achieve the impossible. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. Your fire needs a vessel strong enough to contain it. My darkness needs light to give it purpose. We are meant to complete each other. Lena stared at him, this impossible creature who claimed to have waited centuries for her. She should have been skeptical. Should have demanded proof, logic, reason. Instead, she reached up with trembling fingers and traced the pointed tip of his ear. He shivered at the touch, his eyes falling closed for just a moment. You're really going to help me, she whispered. When Alaric opened his eyes, they blazed with determination. I'm going to make you whole, he promised. And then, together, we're going to make them scream. The moment stretched between them, fragile and electric. Lena felt something shift in her chest, something that had been frozen and dead since the moment her spine snapped. Hope. Dangerous, terrifying hope. And then the world exploded. The entire citadel shook with a force that sent medical equipment crashing to the floor. The fireplace erupted in a shower of sparks. Stone dust rained from the vaulted ceiling. The blue flames turned red, then died completely, plunging the room into darkness broken only by emergency lighting. Alaric was on his feet instantly, positioning himself between Lena and the door. Dr. Soren grabbed the bed frame to keep from falling. What the hell was that? Lena gasped. Another explosion. Closer this time. The sound of shattering stone and screaming metal. Alarms began wailing throughout the fortress, a banshee shriek that made Lena's teeth ache. Alaric's entire demeanor transformed. The tender, grieving lover vanished, replaced by something ancient and lethal. His fangs descended fully, sharp as daggers. His eyes bled from red to crimson gold, a color that hurt to look at directly. When he spoke, his voice resonated with power that made the remaining glass in the room vibrate. Soren, lock down the medical wing. No one enters this room. Sire, what's happening? Alaric moved to the window, a narrow slit in the obsidian stone, and looked out into the night. What he saw made his hands curl into claws, his nails lengthening into talons. Dmitri Volkov, he said, and the name dripped with venom. Nikolai's father. He's brought an army. Lena's blood turned to ice. They're here for me. Yes. Alaric turned back to her, and for a moment, his expression softened. They want your body, Lena. Dead or alive, they want to harvest what's in your veins. Another explosion shook the citadel. Closer still. The sound of combat reached them now, screams, the clash of metal and human roars. How many? Dr. Soren asked, his face pale. Enough to be problematic. Alaric strode back to the bed. He cupped Lena's face in his cold hands, forcing her to meet his blazing eyes. "Listen to me very carefully. You stay in this room. You do not leave. You do not open this door for anyone except me. Do you understand? Alaric, do you understand?" "Yes," she whispered. He leaned down and pressed his forehead against hers. For a moment, he was just a man again, tired, afraid, desperate. "I lost Serafina once," he breathed. "I will not lose you. Not to them. Not to anyone." Then he was gone, moving so fast he blurred, the door slamming shut behind him. Lena sat alone in the darkness, listening to the sounds of war coming closer, feeling the phoenix fire burning in her veins, and wondering if miracles could survive in a world determined to destroy them. The silence after Alaric left was worse than the explosions. Lena could hear everything now, the alarms still wailing, the distant clash of combat, the screams of the dying echoing through stone corridors. Dr. Soren moved frantically around the room, pulling heavy iron bars across the door, drawing symbols on the walls with what looked like silver paint mixed with ash. "What are you doing?" Lena asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "Warding sigils," Soren replied without looking back. "Blood magic barriers. If Volkov's forces breach the inner citadel, these might buy us minutes." He paused, his hand trembling as he drew another symbol. "Maybe seconds." Another explosion rocked the fortress. This one was close enough that Lena felt the vibration through the bed frame, through her dead legs that couldn't feel anything else. Dust rained from the ceiling. The emergency lighting flickered. She couldn't just lie here. Couldn't be helpless while Alaric fought for her, died for her maybe. She'd spent her entire life being invisible, powerless, waiting for someone else to save her. And where had that gotten her? Beaten in an alley. Paralyzed. Left to die in the snow. Not anymore. "Dr. Soren," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos with unexpected authority. "I need you to take me somewhere I can see the battle." The doctor turned, his wire-rimmed glasses reflecting the red emergency lights. "Lady Lena, you cannot possibly." "Then get me a wheelchair," she interrupted. "A window. A balcony. Somewhere." His Majesty gave explicit orders. "I don't care about his orders." The words came out sharper than she intended, but she didn't take them back. "He said I'm his queen, didn't he?" She met Soren's eyes, channeling every ounce of will she had left. "If I'm his queen, then you obey me." For a long moment, Soren stared at her. Then, incredibly, he smiled, a sad, knowing smile that made him look ancient despite his youthful appearance. "You do have her spirit," he murmured. "Very well, my lady." He disappeared into an adjoining room and returned moments later pushing an ornate wheelchair, black lacquered wood with silver filigree, more throne than medical equipment. He lifted Lena with surprising gentleness, settling her into the chair and wrapping a heavy velvet blanket around her legs. The dead weight of her lower body was a constant reminder of what she'd lost. But she couldn't think about that now. Soren pushed her toward a narrow window at the far end of the chamber, one she hadn't noticed before. As they approached, the sounds of battle grew louder, the clash of steel, inhuman roars, the crackle of magic. He positioned her before the window, and Lena's breath caught in her throat. The obsidian citadel sat atop a cliff overlooking a snow-covered valley. Below, illuminated by torches and the eerie glow of blood magic, was an army. Hundreds of figures, some human, some distinctly not armed with silver weapons, crossbows, flaming arrows. They moved in organized formations, led by siege equipment that looked medieval but pulsed with supernatural energy. And at the head of this army stood a giant. Dmitry Volkov was massive, easily 7 feet tall, broad-shouldered and scarred. He wore armor made of blackened metal plates that seemed to absorb light. In his hands, he wielded an obsidian blade as long as Lena was tall, and the weapon crackled with shadow magic, black lightning that made the snow around him turn to ash. His voice boomed across the valley, amplified by some dark enchantment until it echoed off the mountains themselves. "Alaric Nocturne." The name thundered through the night. "We know you have the Phoenix Girl. Give her to us and we'll leave your citadel standing. This doesn't concern you." For a moment, there was only the howl of wind and the crackle of torches. Then Alaric appeared. He materialized on the battlement directly above the main gate, silver hair whipping in the storm wind, burgundy coat billowing behind him like wings. Even from this distance, Lena could see his eyes blazing crimson gold, could feel the power radiating from him like heat from a forge. When he spoke, his voice was cold enough to freeze blood. It carried across the valley with supernatural clarity, reaching every ear with perfect, terrible precision. "You entered my domain, Volkov. You raised weapons against my home. You touched what is mine." He paused, and the silence was somehow worse than screaming. "This is now very much my concern." Dmitri laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "You've grown soft, old king. Protecting cattle, caring for food." He raised his obsidian blade. "Give us the girl, or we'll take her from your ashes. Then come and try." Alaric's words were barely a whisper, but they carried nonetheless. And then he moved. Lena had never seen anything move that fast. One moment he was on the battlement, the next he was in the midst of Volkov's front line, a whirlwind of fangs and claws and supernatural speed. Bodies flew. Blood sprayed across white snow in crimson arcs. Mercenaries with silver swords swung at empty air as Alaric danced between them like death incarnate. But Volkov's forces were prepared. Mages in the backlines chanted in languages Lena didn't recognize, and circles of blood-red light appeared around Alaric, trying to cage him, slow him. Silver nets shot from crossbows, blessed weapons that could actually harm him. "There are too many," Lena whispered, her hands gripping the arms of the wheelchair until her knuckles went white. "He's going to die." "His Majesty has survived worse," Soren said, but his voice lacked conviction. As if hearing her fear, Alaric suddenly looked up at the window. Their eyes met across the distance, across the chaos of battle. For just a moment, he was still, and she saw everything in his expression, centuries of loneliness, the ghost of a woman who died screaming, and a desperate, possessive love that transcended death itself. Then Dmitri Volkov charged, his obsidian blade cutting through the air toward Alaric's heart, and the moment shattered. Lena watched Alaric twist at the last second, the blade missing his chest by inches, but carving a line across his shoulder. Black blood sprayed. Shadow poison spread from the wound like ink in water, and Alaric stumbled. "No," Lena breathed. The Shadow Guard, Alaric's elite warriors, poured from the citadel gates, engaging Volkov's forces. The courtyard became a churning mass of bodies, blood, and magic. But Lena could only watch Alaric, could only see him fighting with one arm now, the shadow poison spreading across his chest like a stain. He was losing. "Lady Lena, we should move back." "No." Her voice was steel. "Get me closer." The balcony overlooking the courtyard. "That's suicide." "Do it." Soren hesitated only a moment, then began pushing her wheelchair toward the door. They moved through corridors filled with smoke and the sounds of invasion. Twice they had to hide as Volkov's mercenaries ran past, hunting for the medical wing, hunting for her. Finally, they reached a balcony that jutted out over the main courtyard. Below, the battle raged. And there Lena's heart seized. There was Alaric, surrounded by 6 of Volkov's lieutenants, the shadow poison having spread to half his torso now. He moved slower, his supernatural grace compromised. Dmitri Volkov strode toward him, obsidian blade raised for a killing blow. "I told you, old king," Dmitri called out. "You've grown soft. And soft things break." Alaric looked up at him, blood on his lips, defiance in his burning eyes. "I have waited 8 centuries for her. I will not fall here. Then you'll fall with your city burning around you." Dmitri raised the blade. And Lena, paralyzed and broken and powerless, screamed. Lena's scream cut through the chaos of battle, raw and primal, born from watching the one person who'd ever made her feel seen about to die. But screaming wouldn't save him. Screaming was what helpless people did, and she was done being helpless. Her eyes darted across the balcony, searching for anything, a weapon, a distraction, something. The stone railing. Too heavy. Decorative urns filled with winter flowers. Too light. And then she saw it. A bronze brazier sat at the corner of the balcony, still burning with coals meant to warm the outdoor space. It was massive, ornate, easily 40 pounds of metal and fire. And it was right at the edge, as if fate itself had placed it there. Below, Dmitry Volkov raised his obsidian blade high. Shadow lightning crackled along its edge, and the air itself seemed to scream. Alaric was on his knees now, one arm hanging useless, black veins of poison spreading across his chest and neck. His eyes, still blazing crimson gold, locked onto Lena's for one final moment. He wasn't afraid. He looked almost peaceful, as if dying to protect her was enough. It wasn't enough for her. "Dr. Soren, push me to that brazier," Lena commanded. "Lady Lena, you can't possibly." "No." Soren obeyed, wheeling her to the balcony's edge. The brazier was taller than she was sitting down, the bronze still hot to the touch, coals glowing red-orange in the winter night. Smoke curled up from it, carrying the scent of burning wood and iron. Below, Dmitry began his downward swing. Lena gripped the lip of the brazier with both hands. The metal seared her palms instantly, but she didn't let go. Couldn't let go. She'd spent years carrying heavy trays, building muscle in her arms and shoulders out of necessity, not choice. Every double shift she'd worked, every time she'd lifted cases of milk and bags of coffee beans, it all came down to this moment. She screamed with everything she had. "Ugly." Dmitry's head snapped up. His eyes, solid black, soulless, found her on the balcony. For a split second, confusion crossed his scarred face. That was all the time she needed. Lena threw her entire upper body weight forward, using momentum and leverage and desperation. The brazier tipped. Hot coals spilled out, trailing sparks and smoke as the massive bronze vessel plummeted 3 stories. Gravity did the rest. The brazier hit Dmitry Volkov square in the head with a sound like a church bell being struck. The impact drove him to his knees. The obsidian blade flew from his hands, clattering across blood-slicked cobblestones. Burning coals scattered across his armor, his face, his shoulders. He roared in pain and fury, clawing at his face where the hot bronze had seared him. And Alaric moved. Despite the poison, despite his injuries, the Vampire King surged forward with the last reserves of his ancient strength. His fangs extended fully, his claws lengthened to talons, and his eyes burned like twin suns. He was 800 years old. He had toppled empires and slaughtered armies. And nothing, not poison, not pain, not the approach of death itself, would stop him from protecting what was his. Alaric drove his hand straight through Dmitry Volkov's chest plate. The blackened metal crumpled like paper. His clawed fingers wrapped around the warlord's heart, cold, black, corrupted by centuries of dark magic, and he ripped it free. Dmitry's eyes went wide. He tried to speak, but only blood came out. "You should have left her in the snow," Alaric snarled, his voice barely recognizable, more beast than man. "You should have walked away." He crushed the heart in his fist. It crumbled to ash between his fingers. Dmitry Volkov, lieutenant of the Crimson Syndicate, scourge of the vampire underworld, dissolved into ash and shadow. His armor clattered empty to the ground. The wind picked up his remains and scattered them across the blood-stained snow until nothing remained but a memory of violence. For one heartbeat, the courtyard was silent. Then chaos erupted. The remaining Syndicate forces, mercenaries and turned vampires who'd followed Volkov for gold and power, saw their leader reduced to dust. They saw the Vampire King standing over his ashes, covered in blood and shadow poison, still somehow radiating power that made the air itself tremble. They broke. Ran. fled into the winter night like roaches when the light comes on. Alaric's shadow guard let them go, too exhausted to give chase. Bodies littered the courtyard, friend and enemy alike. The snow was trampled and stained, more red than white now. Smoke rose from burning siege equipment. They'd won. But victory tasted like ash. Alaric took one step forward. Then another. His legs trembled. The shadow poison had spread to his jaw now, black veins crawling up his neck like grasping fingers. His regeneration, the supernatural healing that should have already closed his wounds, wasn't working. The cursed blade had done its job well. Alaric! Lena screamed from the balcony. He looked up at her. Blood ran from his mouth. His eyes were dimming, the crimson gold fading to dull red. But he smiled, a tired, tender smile that made him look almost human. "You saved me," he said, his voice barely carrying across the distance. Wonder colored his words, as if he couldn't quite believe it. "You saved me." Then his legs gave out. The Vampire King collapsed onto the blood-stained cobblestones with a sound that broke something inside Lena's chest. "Alaric." Her scream was primal, anguished. "Dr. Soren, get me down there. Get me down there now." But Soren was already moving, spinning her wheelchair around and racing back through the corridors. They flew through smoke-filled hallways, past wounded shadow guards being tended by medics, past walls scorched by magic. By the time they reached the courtyard, Alaric's soldiers had already surrounded their king. They parted immediately when they saw Lena, forming a path with military precision. Dr. Soren pushed her through the crowd until she could see him. Alaric lay on his back, chest barely rising. The shadow poison had spread everywhere now, his face, his arms, creeping toward his heart. Black veins pulsed beneath his pale skin like a web of death. His silver hair was matted with blood and ash. "Get him to the medical wing," Dr. Soren commanded, and soldiers immediately moved to lift their king. "Wait," Alaric rasped. His hand reached out, searching. "Lena." She wheeled herself closer, taking his cold hand in both of hers. His fingers were like ice, colder than they'd been before, as if the warmth of his ancient power was draining away. "I'm here," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm right here." His eyes focused on her with difficulty. "You dropped a brazier on his head." "I couldn't think of anything else." "It was." He coughed, black blood bubbling at his lips. "Perfect. Don't talk. Save your strength." "Lena." His grip tightened weakly. "If I don't survive this." "You're surviving," she said fiercely. "You're 800 years old. You've survived worse." "If I don't," he continued, ignoring her, "don't let them turn you. Don't let anyone have your blood. Live. Be free." His eyes closed. "Be happy." "No." The word came out as a sob. "No, you don't get to save me and then die. That's not how this works." But his hand went limp in hers. His chest stopped moving. The courtyard fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Dr. Soren knelt beside Alaric, placing 2 fingers against his neck. After a moment, he looked up at Lena, his expression grave. "His heart has stopped. The shadow poison has reached it." His voice was heavy with centuries of grief. "The king is dying." Lena stared at the man who'd found her in the snow, who'd called her a queen, who'd waited 800 years for her. The man who'd just won a war and lost everything. And she remembered what he'd said in her room, before the world exploded. "Your blood can kill us, yes. But for me, I am old enough, strong enough to withstand the burn. And if I can bond with your essence, it won't just destroy Lena. It will heal, Her phoenix blood. Solar fire in her veins." She looked at Dr. Soren, and her voice didn't waver. "Take us to the medical wing. And bring the transfusion equipment." She met his eyes, and he saw steel there. "We're going to save him." The medical wing had become a tomb. Alaric lay on the surgical table, his silver hair fanned across black silk, his burgundy coat cut away to reveal the devastation beneath. Black veins covered every inch of his pale skin, pulsing with shadow poison that seemed to have a life of its own. They writhed beneath the surface like parasites, spreading toward his silent heart. Dr. Soren worked with frantic precision, his hands moving faster than human eyes could track. He'd already tried 3 different antidotes, 2 purification spells, and an extraction ritual that should have pulled the poison from Alaric's blood. Nothing worked. The shadow magic was too ancient, too powerful, designed specifically to kill primordial vampires. His heart has stopped completely now, Soren said, his voice hollow. The poison has reached the core. It's devouring his essence from the inside out. In another few minutes, there won't be anything left to save. Lena sat in her wheelchair beside the table, still wearing the blanket Soren had wrapped around her dead legs. Her hands were burned from the brazier, blistered and raw, but she barely felt it. All she could see was Alaric's face, peaceful in death, as if he'd finally found rest after 800 years of searching. "Use my blood," she said. Soren's hands stilled. He looked at her over his wire-rimmed glasses. "Lady Lena, my phoenix blood. Use it. Your blood will incinerate him." Soren's voice rose with desperation. "We saw what it did to vampire essence in the vial. It consumed it. Destroyed it completely. If I transfuse your blood into His Majesty, it will burn him from the inside out. It will be the most agonizing death imaginable." He said he was strong enough to handle it. Lena's voice didn't waver. "He said he could withstand the burn. That we could bond." He was theorizing. Hoping. Soren ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair. "I have no precedent for this. No research. No studies. Phoenix blood and primordial vampire essence have never been combined. Ever. For good reason." Lena looked down at Alaric's face. She thought about him kneeling in the snow, lifting her broken body with such care. She thought about his eyes when he recognized her, centuries of loneliness cracking open to reveal desperate hope. She thought about him standing before an army, poisoned and wounded, because she was worth protecting. "If we don't try, he dies anyway," she said quietly. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steel. "Hook us up." For a long moment, Soren stood frozen. Then he nodded once, sharply, and moved with purpose. He pulled equipment from glass cabinets, tubes, needles, monitoring devices that hummed with both technology and magic. His hands trembled as he worked, preparing the transfusion setup with the care of someone who knew he was either performing a miracle or committing murder. "This could kill you both," he warned as he swabbed Lena's arm with antiseptic. "The feedback could be catastrophic. Your heart might not survive the strain." "Then we die together," Lena said simply. "Better than living without trying." The needle entered her vein with a sharp pinch. Crimson blood, her phoenix blood, burning with solar fire, began flowing into the tube. Soren connected the other end to Alaric's arm with practiced precision, his face pale and drawn. "May whatever gods are listening have mercy on us all," he whispered. He opened the valve. Lena watched her blood flow down the clear tube, impossibly red, almost glowing in the dim light. It traveled the distance between her arm and Alaric's, bridging the gap between life and death, human and vampire, sun and shadow. The moment her blood entered his vein, nothing happened. Lena's heart sank. It wasn't working. They were too late. He was all ready. Alaric's back arched off the table with such force that the restraint snapped. A roar tore from his throat, not words, but pure sound, ancient and terrible and filled with agony that made the windows crack. His body convulsed. The black veins of shadow poison ignited with white gold light, burning away like flash paper in flame. But it wasn't gentle. It was violent, catastrophic. His veins glowed so bright they were visible through his skin, a network of liquid sun consuming the darkness. "It's working," Soren gasped. "The phoenix fire is burning away the poison." But then Lena gasped, her own back arching in the wheelchair. The connection flowed both ways. Ice flooded her veins. Not painful, transcendent. She felt power surge into her body like a tidal wave. 800 years of accumulated strength and magic and immortal will pouring through the transfusion line. It was overwhelming, enormous, too much for a human body to contain. Her vision exploded with sensation. She could hear everything, the hum of electricity in the walls, the heartbeat of soldiers 3 floors below, the whisper of snow falling outside. She could smell blood and steel and fear and hope. Her body felt too small, too fragile, a vessel desperately trying to hold an ocean. By the ancients, Soren breathed. It's a resonance feedback loop. They're not just exchanging blood, they're metabolizing each other, becoming each other. The room began to shake. Medical equipment rattled on shelves. The glass windows cracked, spider webbing outward from the center. The blue flames in the fireplace turned gold, then white, blazing so hot that Soren had to step back. On the table, Alaric's body was transforming. The white-gold light consumed the last traces of shadow poison, burning it away until his veins ran clear. His chest, which had been still and silent, suddenly heaved with breath. His heart, dead for nearly 10 minutes, began to beat again. But differently. Stronger. Each pulse sent light rippling through his circulatory system. And Lena felt it. Felt his heart beating in her own chest, felt his ancient consciousness brushing against hers like a wing passing in darkness. Lena? His voice in her mind, weak but wondering. I'm here. What did you do? I saved you, you idiot. The transfusion line between them glowed now, no longer just carrying blood but something else. Energy. Essence. The fundamental forces that made them what they were, flowing back and forth, finding equilibrium, finding balance. I have to stop this, Soren said, reaching for the valve. The feedback is too intense. Your bodies can't. No. The word came from both of them simultaneously, spoken with 2 voices but 1 will. Alaric's eyes snapped open. They were no longer red. They blazed with pure gold, the color of sunlight, of phoenix fire, of something that had never existed in all of history. He sat up in one fluid motion, the transfusion line still connecting them. His hand shot out and grabbed Soren's wrist before the doctor could touch the valve. Don't, Alaric said, his voice resonating with power that made the stone walls vibrate. It's not finished. He turned his head, those impossible gold eyes finding Lena. She stared back, feeling the connection between them, feeling his essence flowing into her while hers flowed into him. Her body was changing, she could feel it. The ice in her veins wasn't killing her, it was strengthening her, reinforcing her, making her more than she'd been. And through the connection, she felt something else. Felt the white gold fire of her phoenix blood reaching the base of her spine where the vertebrae were crushed and dead. Felt it begin to burn. Alaric, she gasped. Something's happening. My spine. I know, he said, and despite everything, he smiled. Hold on, my love. This is going to hurt. The light flared one final time, blindingly bright, and Lena screamed as 8 centuries of vampire power and the purifying fire of her phoenix blood collided at the sight of her injury. The room filled with golden light. And then everything went white. When Lena's vision cleared, the first thing she noticed was the silence. The roar of power, the earthquake trembling of the transfusion, the alarms and chaos, all of it had stopped. The medical wing was utterly quiet except for the soft crackle of the fireplace and the sound of her own ragged breathing. The second thing she noticed was that she was glowing. White gold light pulsed beneath her skin like a second heartbeat, flowing through her veins in rhythmic waves. It didn't hurt, not exactly. It felt like standing too close to a bonfire, that edge between warmth and burning, between comfort and pain. Alaric was standing now, the transfusion line disconnected and discarded on the floor. He looked transformed. The shadow poison was completely gone, his pale skin unmarred except for faint silver scars where the obsidian blade had cut him. His silver hair seemed to shimmer with its own light. And his eyes held flecks of gold now, scattered through the crimson like stars in a red sky. He moved her wheelchair with that fluid vampire grace, but there was something different about him now. Something more. As if the phoenix fire in his veins had changed him on a fundamental level. "Lena," he said softly, kneeling beside her chair. His hand reached out, hovering over hers. "May I?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. His fingers closed around hers, and the moment they touched, she felt it, the connection between them, deeper than blood, deeper than magic. A bond that resonated in the marrow of her bones. She could feel his relief, his wonder, his fear for her. And he could feel hers. "The fire is working," he said, his voice filled with awe. "I can sense it. Your phoenix blood and my essence, they're not fighting anymore. They're cooperating. Building something new." He stood and gently pulled back the velvet blanket covering her legs. Lena looked down and gasped. Her legs were glowing. The same white gold light that pulsed through her arms and chest was concentrated there, brightest at her lower back where her spine had been shattered. Through her skin, impossibly, she could see through her skin bones were moving, knitting back together. Vertebrae that had been crushed to powder were reforming, rebuilding themselves cell by cell. And the nerves. God, the nerves. She could see them too, delicate golden threads weaving through damaged tissue, reconnecting synapses that had been severed, bridging gaps that should have been permanent. The heat intensified. What had been warm became hot, became burning. Sweat beaded on her forehead, ran down her temples. The pain was building, a crescendo that made her teeth clench and her hands grip the arms of the wheelchair hard enough that the wood cracked. "It burns," she gasped. "Oh God, it burns." Alaric took her hand again, his cold skin a shock against her fevered palm. "I know," he said, and there was such gentleness in his voice. "I know, Lena. But you have to feel it. Don't fight it. Let the fire do its work. Let it rebuild you." "I can't, it's too much." "Yes, you can." His other hand cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. Those gold-flecked eyes burned with intensity. "Pain is life, Lena. Numbness is death. You've been numb for days, and before that you were numb in other ways, invisible, forgotten, barely surviving. But you're not numb anymore. You're alive. So feel it." The light flared brighter. The pain peaked, became a white-hot sun at the base of her spine. Lena screamed, and Alaric held her through it, his cold hands anchoring her, his presence keeping her from flying apart. Through the agony, she felt something shift. Deep in her spine, where everything had been broken and silent, something clicked into place. A vertebra settling into position. A nerve finding its partner. A pathway reopening after days of darkness. The fire began to fade. Not all at once, but gradually, like dawn retreating after sunrise. The white gold light dimmed, pulsed slower, sank deeper into her tissue until it was barely visible. The heat receded, leaving behind a warmth that felt right, felt natural, like sunlight on skin. Silence fell over the medical wing again. Lena sat in her wheelchair, panting, soaked with sweat, trembling from the aftermath. Alaric still held her hand, still watched her with those impossible eyes. Dr. Soren stood frozen near the door, his face pale with shock. "In 8 centuries," he whispered, "I have never seen anything like that." Alaric didn't look away from Lena. His voice was soft, almost tender. "Move your foot." Lena's breath caught. This was the moment. Either the miracle had worked, or it had all been beautiful agony for nothing. She closed her eyes. Focused. Found that pathway in her mind that connected brain to body, the one that had been severed in an alley behind a cafe by men who thought she was worthless. "Move," she commanded her right foot. Asterisk, please. Please move, asterisk. For a heartbeat. Nothing. Then a twitch. The smallest movement. Her big toe flexed. Lena's eyes flew open. "Did you see that? Did you?" "Try again," Alaric urged, and his voice was thick with emotion she'd never heard from him before. Hope. She focused harder. Sent the signal down her spine, through the newly healed pathways, all the way to her extremities. Her ankle flexed. Then her knee. Then, impossibly, miraculously, her entire leg bent. A sob broke from Lena's throat. Not from pain. From joy so intense it felt like shattering. I can feel the sheets, she gasped, tears streaming down her face. I can feel them against my skin. I can feel the wheelchair under my legs. I can feel everything. She tried the other leg. It responded immediately, bending at the knee, flexing at the ankle. Both legs. Moving. Responsive. Alive. I'm going to stand, she said suddenly. Lena, wait, Soren started forward. Your muscles have atrophied. You need physical therapy, time to. But she was already gripping the arms of the wheelchair, already pushing herself up. Her legs shook. They were weak, and used to bearing weight, but they held. They held. Alaric's hands steadied her, his touch cold and sure. She stood, really stood, for the first time since the alley. Her legs trembled like a newborn foal's, but she was upright. She was standing. Oh my God, she breathed. Oh my God, Her legs gave out. But Alaric caught her, swept her up into his arms before she could fall. He held her against his chest, and she felt his heart beating slow, powerful, no longer silent but transformed, carrying traces of her phoenix fire in every pulse. You're recovering, he said. Your spine is healed, but your muscles need time. Days, maybe weeks of rehabilitation. I don't care, Lena said, laughing through her tears. I felt them. I moved them. I'm not paralyzed anymore. Alaric looked down at her, and the expression on his face was something she'd never seen before. Vulnerability. Wonder. Devotion so intense it was almost frightening. You saved me, he said quietly. You offered your phoenix blood knowing it could kill me. Knowing it could kill you. You sacrificed yourself to save a monster. You're not a monster, Lena whispered, reaching up to trace the sharp line of his jaw, the point of his ear. You're the man who found me in the snow and refused to let me die. And you saved me in return. His eyes, red with flecks of gold, vampire and phoenix fire combined, held hers. In saving me, you saved yourself. He carried her to the medical bed and laid her down gently on black silk sheets. But he didn't step away. Instead, he sat beside her, taking her hand again, that connection between them humming with power. We are bound now, Lena, he said, and his voice resonated with the weight of an unbreakable vow. Blood to blood. Fire to shadow. What you gave me, I have given back to you. We are no longer just vampire and human. We are something new. Something that has never existed. What does that mean? Lena asked, though part of her already knew. Alaric lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her scarred knuckles with reverence. It means when my heart beats, you feel it. When your blood burns with phoenix fire, I carry that flame. We are two halves of an impossible whole. He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. It means you are my queen, Lena. Not because I found you. Not because you remind me of someone I lost. But because you chose to save me. Because you fought when you had every reason to surrender. Because you are fierce and brave and extraordinary in your own right. His lips found hers, cold mouth against warm, vampire against phoenix, shadow against sun. The kiss was fierce and possessive and desperate, tasting of blood and magic and impossible promises. When they parted, Lena was breathless, her heart racing in her chest. My phoenix queen, Alaric whispered against her lips. My salvation. My destruction. My everything. Lena smiled, feeling strength returning to her body, feeling the bond between them pulse with golden light. And you're my vampire king, she said. My savior. My partner. My forever. Outside the medical wing, snow continued to fall over the obsidian citadel. But inside, two souls who had been broken beyond repair had found each other and forged something unbreakable. The world had tried to destroy them both. They had destroyed the world's expectations instead. And they were just getting started. 6 months later, the same snow fell on the same street, but everything else had changed. The luxury car pulled to the curb with whisper-quiet precision, a custom Bentley in midnight black with crimson interior, the kind of vehicle that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. The door opened, and Lena stepped out into the winter night. She wore a crimson coat lined with white fur, tailored perfectly to her frame. Beneath it, a black dress that moved like liquid shadow. Her auburn hair had grown longer, styled in elegant waves that caught the streetlight and shimmered with hints of gold. Heeled boots, designer, expensive, completely impractical for snow, carried her with confident, powerful strides across the sidewalk. She walked without hesitation, without pain, without fear. When she turned to wait for Alaric, the back of her dress dipped low enough to reveal a thin golden scar running down her spine, a luminous line that looked less like an injury and more like a lightning strike captured in skin. A mark of survival. A badge of transformation. The street was the same one where she'd nearly died. The alley was still there, behind what used to be the Moonbeam Cafe. But the cafe itself had been transformed. Renovated with floor-to-ceiling windows, elegant interior lighting, and a new sign in gold and crimson, Phoenix and Shadow. Alaric emerged from the car behind her, silver hair catching the snowlight like starfire. He wore a black suit with a burgundy silk shirt, looking every inch the ancient king he was. But now his eyes held those permanent flecks of gold, Phoenix fire bound eternally to vampire crimson. He offered his arm. She took it without hesitation, their fingers intertwining naturally, the bond between them humming with contentment. "Ready for the gallery opening, my love?" he asked, his voice carrying that velvet rumble that still made her heart skip. Lena paused, looking down at the exact spot where she'd lain 6 months ago. The snow was pristine now, unmarked, beautiful. But she remembered how it had looked stained with her blood, how the cold had seeped into her bones, how she'd thought she was dying alone and forgotten. "In a moment," she said softly. "I want to remember what it felt like to lie here broken." Alaric's grip tightened on her hand, protective even now. "So I never forget what it feels like to stand here whole," she finished, looking up at him with a smile that held both steel and warmth. His expression transformed pride and love and something fiercer, something possessive that would have terrified her 6 months ago. Now it made her feel seen, claimed, cherished. "You're extraordinary," he said simply. "We're extraordinary," she corrected. Together. They stood in silence for a moment, watching snow fall on the street that had tried to be her grave. Around them, the city hummed with life, holiday shoppers, late-night workers, ordinary people living ordinary lives. None of them knew that a vampire king and his phoenix queens stood among them. None of them knew what walked in their midst. "The syndicate's remnants are still out there," Alaric said quietly. "Nikolai escaped during the siege. Others scattered. They'll regroup eventually. Try again." Lena felt the phoenix fire stir in her veins, responding to the promise of a threat. Her eyes flashed gold, not just flecks now, but a complete transformation, burning bright in the darkness for just a moment before fading back to their natural blue-green. "Good," she said, and her smile was all teeth. "I'm hungry for a hunt." Alaric laughed, a sound of genuine delight that echoed off the buildings. "My fierce queen." "Your equal," she corrected again. "Your partner." "Yes," he agreed, bringing her hand to his lips. "Always." They began walking down the snow-covered street, arm in arm, moving with synchronized grace. Lena's heeled boots left delicate prints in the fresh snow. Alaric's designer shoes left prints beside hers, not behind, not ahead, but parallel. Side by side. Equals. She'd spent 26 years being invisible. Being nobody. A barista serving coffee to people who never learned her name, living paycheck to paycheck, one missed shift away from homelessness. She'd been beaten, paralyzed, left to die because men decided her blood made her either useful or dangerous, but never saw her as a person who mattered. Now she walked through the same streets transformed. Not just healed, transformed. The phoenix fire in her veins had done more than repair her spine. It had awakened something that had always been there, waiting. Power. Purpose. The ability to protect herself and those she loved. The Crimson Syndicate had tried to harvest her like cattle. They'd tried to eliminate her like a problem to be solved. They'd created their own destruction instead. "What are you thinking?" Alaric asked, reading her expression with the ease of their bond. "That Nikolai and his surviving associates are going to regret not finishing the job," Lena said. "That they're going to learn the difference between a victim and a survivor." "We could let them run," Alaric suggested, though his tone said he didn't actually believe it. "Hide. Live out their miserable lives in fear." Lena stopped walking. She turned to face him fully, her eyes meeting his without hesitation. 6 months ago, she couldn't have held the gaze of the Vampire King without flinching. Now she matched him, power for power, will for will. "They hurt me because they thought I was weak," she said quietly. "They thought being human meant being prey. They need to learn that some prey evolves into predators." Her eyes flashed gold again. "And I'm very hungry." Alaric's smile was proud and dangerous. "Then we hunt." They continued walking through the falling snow, two figures moving through the winter night like myths come to life. Behind them, Phoenix and Shadow glowed with warm light, a monument to survival, to transformation, to refusing to let darkness win. Ahead of them, the city spread out in all directions, full of shadows and secrets and remnants of the Syndicate who still thought the Phoenix Girl was dead. They were going to learn otherwise. Lena looked up at the falling snow, feeling each flake land on her skin, feeling her legs carry her forward with strength she'd earned through fire and blood. She was alive. She was whole. She was powerful. She was the Phoenix Queen. And the world was about to discover what that meant. Their footprints remained in the snow long after they'd disappeared into the night, two sets of tracks, side by side, equal in depth and stride. Not victim and savior. Not broken and healer. But partners. Warriors. Legends being written in real time. The snow continued to fall, covering the prints eventually, erasing the evidence. But some transformations can't be erased. Some bonds can't be broken. Some queens can't be forgotten. And some hunts are just beginning. Is Lena truly Seraphina reborn, or is she something entirely new, something even more powerful than the wife Alaric lost centuries ago? What happens when the Phoenix Queen discovers the full extent of her powers, when the solar fire in her veins evolves beyond healing into something weaponized and devastating? The Crimson Syndicate isn't finished. Nikolai Volkov is still out there, planning his revenge, gathering allies who see Lena as either the ultimate prize or the ultimate threat. And neither Lena nor Alaric is content to wait for the next attack. The hunter has become the hunted. The victim has become the executioner. The barista who served coffee for tips has become a force of nature that will reshape the supernatural world. The Phoenix Queen is rising. And she's bringing fire. Comment Phoenix Queen below if you want to see Lena's revenge against the Syndicate. Will she embrace her power completely, or will the cost of vengeance threaten the bond she's forged with Alaric? The hunt begins now.